Something breaks. Doesn't matter what. Pipe under the sink. Car that won't start. A friend who calls at 11 p.m. completely falling apart. A coworker about to say something that ends their career, and they don't know it yet. And before anyone has finished explaining the problem, something in you has already started. Not panic, not let me Google that. Something quieter, a settling, like your brain just shifted into a gear other people don't seem to have. You go quiet for a second, and then you start. Here's what nobody ever told you. That's not a personality trait. It's not because you're naturally handy or calm. It's because of when you were born and what that specific window did to the architecture of your brain. If you were born between 1976 and 1985, the tail end of Gen X, a microgeneration now recognized by the Oxford Dictionary as Xennials, this is about you. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why you are the way you are, in the way that makes you sit back and go, oh, that's why. You're at a family gathering, something stops working. The Wi-Fi, the boiler, the situation between two relatives that's been quietly building all afternoon. Everyone looks at each other. Someone pulls out their phone. Someone else suggests calling a professional. And then there's you. You've already walked over to it. You're already looking at it with that expression. Not quite a frown, not quite focus. That expression people around you have been watching your whole life without ever knowing what to call it. You don't announce that you're gonna fix it. You just start. 20 minutes later, it's done, and someone says, they always say this, how did you know how to do that? And you genuinely don't know how to answer because you didn't learn it anywhere specific. There was no moment, no teacher, no manual you remember reading. You just knew, or you knew that you'd figure it out, which somehow, for you, is the same thing. That's not a coincidence. That's not luck. That's the result of a childhood that built something inside you that most people don't carry, and that the generation behind you will likely never develop in quite the same way. Stop for a second, because this next part is the part most people get wrong. Everyone wants to say it was hardship that made you this way. The difficult childhood, the absent parent, the having to figure it out alone. And yes, we'll get there. But that's not the whole story. Here's something neuroscience has only recently started saying clearly. Boredom built you, not metaphorically, literally. Those long, slow afternoons when you were 10 years old and nothing was happening and nobody was coming to entertain you, your brain wasn't wasting time. It was constructing. Neuroscience research shows that unstructured downtime activates what's called the default mode network, a system in the brain responsible for creative problem-solving, self-direction, and the ability to generate your own solutions rather than waiting for someone to hand them to you. You had years of that, unsupervised, unscheduled, unstimulated. Many generations after yours had that time colonized by screens, by structured activities, by the constant incoming signal of a connected world. None of that silence. Less. And less silence during the exact years the brain is building its problem-solving architecture is not a small thing. You weren't bored as a kid, you were being wired. And while you were being wired, you were also touching things, fixing things, breaking things, and living with the consequences until you figured it out. Researchers studying embodied cognition found that when a child learns through their hands, the brain encodes a physical memory below the level of words. That's why when someone asks how you knew what to do, you pause. You didn't know it in language. You just knew it in your hands, in something older and faster than thought. You can't Google that. It was built through thousands of ordinary, unremarkable hours that will never exist in quite the same way again. Here's where it gets more honest, and a little harder. Not every Xennial came out of childhood knowing how to hold things together, and not everyone who fixes things is a Xennial. But your microgeneration had a specific combination. Analog problems, limited supervision, no instant answers, just enough pressure that figuring it out started to feel normal. That mix isn't universal. It just happened to be the default condition of a specific childhood that quietly closed around 1995. This is worth saying, because the difficult childhood builds resilience story gets told like it's automatic, like suffering always produces strength. It doesn't. Psychologist Donald Meichenbaum spent decades studying stress inoculation, the idea that exposure to manageable difficulty early in life builds a nervous system that stays functional under pressure. The key word is manageable. Too little adversity, and the nervous system never learns to adapt. Too much, it doesn't adapt either. It just breaks. Xennials, as a generation, largely hit the middle of that curve, not protected from everything, not destroyed by everything. Hard enough, often enough, that something in your nervous system learned, not to panic, not to freeze, but to move, to start doing something, because waiting for rescue wasn't reliably on the table. That's why, today, when something breaks, your nervous system doesn't sound an alarm. It sounds a starting pistol. You didn't choose this. This wasn't an achievement. Your childhood made the decision and handed you the bill without explaining what it was for. Because there is a bill. The same nervous system that walks calmly into a broken situation. It doesn't have an off switch. It runs the same background process at the dinner table that it runs at work. It scans the room before you've even taken your coat off, registers something wrong in someone's voice before they finish their sentence, starts calculating what the next hour requires before anyone has asked anything. You're not anxious exactly. It doesn't feel like anxiety. It feels like awareness, readiness, competence. But it's also exhausting in a way that's hard to explain to people who don't carry it. Because here's the invisible part. When you're always the one who knows what to do, people stop asking if you're okay. They just assume you are. They assume the person who fixes things is fine, that the person who stays calm doesn't need anyone to stay calm for them. And you've let them assume that for years, probably. Because somewhere along the way, being useful started to feel close enough to being loved that the difference stopped mattering. Or you told yourself it did. That's not a character flaw. That's what happens when a child learns that competence is currency. And here's what nobody prepares you for. The more you fix things, the more you get handed. There's no graduation. No one ever says, okay, someone else's turn. The pile just keeps growing, quietly, indefinitely. So here's what I want you to take from this. What you carry isn't just capability, it's evidence. Proof of something that happened inside you during a window of time that is genuinely unrepeatable, and that most people around you benefit from daily without understanding its cost or its source. The fixing isn't the thing. The fixing is a symptom of a brain forged in a specific way during a specific era that shaped you down to the architecture of how you think. You didn't learn to fix things. You learned that things could be fixed, that broken was not permanent, that if you stayed with a problem long enough and moved toward it instead of away, it would give. That belief, quiet, unspoken, rarely examined, is one of the most psychologically rare things a person can carry. Most people, when something breaks, feel their options narrowing, that rising helplessness of, I don't know what to do. You feel the problem come into focus. That's not confidence. It's a relationship with difficulty that your childhood installed in you before you were old enough to know what was being built. You didn't get a manual for any of this. You figured it out, like you figure everything out, on your own, in real time, without a net. That's the most Xennial sentence I know how to write. And if this finally put a name to something you've been carrying without words, leave it in the comments. Tell me what you fix. Tell me who you are in the room when something breaks. I read every single one. Take a breath. You built something rare, and you matter.